Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing Illusion by Renaissance.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
Yes, this is our first Renaissance album on this list. I am so excited, but beforehand, let's get right into my favorite bits from this album. So this is Renaissance's second studio album and it came out in 1971. Now personally, I do not believe that Renaissance need any introduction, but I do find they are the basically underdogs of symphonic prog and not a lot of people know about them, or a lot of people that should know about them don't know, so I'm gonna elaborate just a bit. I'm actually gonna elaborate quite a lot. So Renaissance was founded in 1969 from the ashes of the Yardbirds. Now the Yardbirds are a band that would later move on to become what we all know as Led Zeppelin. So yes, Renaissance and Led Zeppelin have a common, history together. But Jane and Keith Relf from the Yardbirds actually went ahead in pursuit of a different sound and they created Renaissance to create their own progressive music. Now if you're a bit acquainted with Renaissance, you would see that the lineup on here is not what you'd expect. The lineup on here is quite different from what there is from the third album onwards. That's because on the first two albums we have a pretty similar lineup, both consisting of Keith and Jane Relf and other players on here, but then when it came to actually recording the third album, the band basically had an overhaul and all the members were replaced, and maybe most notably Jane Relf with her voice was replaced by Annie Halsam, which is the well-known singer for Renaissance from that point onwards. And although I want to talk about Annie Halsam as much as I can and her 5-octave range and her angelic voice, I'm not going to do that because we're focusing on Jane Relf on this album. And of course all the other people that are also singing on this album in lead or backing vocals. So now that we got this out of the way, let's talk about this album. So this album was basically made right after the first album of Renaissance. Now this one was mostly written by the first lineup of Renaissance, but they didn't finish it quite yet and the band got its first overhaul, and this second lineup basically had to finish this album, mainly the last track. So when it comes to it, this album, although pretty cohesive in mind, it still has this certain lingering feeling of uncertain musical direction. So for example, you have a song like Mr. Pine, which honestly to me feels like two separate songs just put and meshed together into one track, and it's overall pretty odd, but it's somewhat good at the same time. You also have the pretty cheesy opener track of Love Goes On. Now honestly, I kind of like that track, but in some way when it comes to the repeating chorus of like Love Goes On, it really sounds like a South Park parody they would make on a song. Like if you know South Park, you know exactly what I mean, and if you don't, just go ahead and listen to it, trust me. And honestly, all of the songs on here, they're pretty good overall. Maybe a bit rough around the edges, but honestly they're pretty fine. Not as good as later Renaissance would be, but they're still good. And if you're into like, long instrumental, spacey, experimental, psychedelic, prog, you should go ahead and check out the last track of Past Orbits or something. Yeah, it's Past Orbits of Dust. I just don't understand what dust has to do with anything. Oh, maybe because planets used to be dust? It's so amazing. How did I not think about it, honestly? And my personal favorite from here is actually Golden Thread. It really sounds like good prog, although it doesn't sound anything like what you'd find on future Renaissance albums. I still believe that to itself it is a pretty great song. So while this album would not sound the same as its predecessors, I still think that it's a pretty good album and it holds the test of time. And I know it's pretty unpopular and most people would probably say that this is the worst prog album that came out in the 70s. I myself believe that it's actually pretty fine, and when it comes to Renaissance and overall prog music, I liked it quite a bit. So yeah, if you're watching this video and you know about this album, tell me what do you think about it down in the comments, and if you don't know, go ahead and listen to it and then come back and write some. So this cover is pretty yucky. I don't really like it. It doesn't look good. I couldn't find a real good, image of the cover, but I think that it has this really odd shade of, brown to it. Maybe it's black and I'm just saying it wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm being wrong. I've never seen this one in person. But honestly, I like this realistic idea, but I think that the execution is far off from good. Like, it's literally one step off from looking like a mismatched collage of, images made in Photoshop and MS Word 2003. Like, look at that logo of Renaissance. Like, what does it have to do with anything? And why is it not like in a meaningful place? And this cover is just, I don't know, so odd. I know the backside has this really, compelling piece that has this old man walking the same trail, and I believe it's the same person. But honestly, the idea is there, the execution, as I said, not there. And yes, although arguably being their worst album from the 70s, I would have to rate this album pretty high and say that it's an 8 out of 10. I like it quite a bit, there's nothing I can do about it, I was born this way, you see, and this is what I like. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to 3 of a Perfect Pair by the Legends King Crimson. But that is all, guys. Have a wonderful day and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.